Hey everyone, let's talk about the macroeconomic markets here. Oh, I haven't touched on this topic since the batch I did back in the summertime, as there were major issues that needed highlighting. Now, since then, nothing really has changed enough for me to alter my assessment, hence, no videos. Recently, however, I'm starting to see issues rooted in misconceptions that I feel need to be addressed. Now, a lot of this is from the interest rates, the future of the Fed funds rate, and the very much hyped Fed pivot. Later this week, it's expected that in the final Fed meeting of 2022, we will have a 50 basis point hike, which is a decrease from the 75-point hike that we had for several months now. We may see a temporary rally, possibly the typical Christmas rally we get this time of the year, or it could be from the hype on the fact that it's only a 50 basis point hike. But the fundamentals aren't ready to support a sustained uptrend, and I think many are jumping the gun quite a bit. The ultimate goal of this video, regardless of what side you believe in, bullish or bearish, is to give you the complete package of information so you can make the best decision possible. Here's the first part of that package, and that's understanding the Fed pivot. When I hear people talking about the Fed pivot fueled by a potential 50 basis point hike, they're just too eager to get back into those bullish times when making money was just so easy. I believe people are just reading the headlines and communicating those general ideas, but not really understanding the details. Let me explain. Here's a basic graph, and let's use this as an example of the cycle of the Fed funds rate. There are different parts to the cycle. Part 1, you have increasing rates. Part 2, you have increasing rates but at a slower pace. Part 3 is where the rates remain high, but they're flat, neither increasing or decreasing. Now this graph here isn't doing this part justice because this can actually be much flatter for longer, but it's the best stock video I had, so we're going with it. Part 4 is then the decreasing of rates, and Part 5 is getting back to the ideal low rate. We need to understand that we're only currently in Part 1. We haven't started to decrease rates yet, and there's only rumors that we will begin to do so in mid-December. Why does this matter? Well, there are some definitive data-based reasons why this matters. Let's look at the Fed funds rate chart versus any market index, and here I have the S&P 500 versus the Fed funds rate. Let's first zoom in to get a clearer look. Here's the 2000s, and the Fed funds rate is in orange while the market index is in blue. The start of the decreasing of rates, so that's the start of Part 4, is right here. The market keeps going down, and the bottom of the market is well after this point. In other words, the bottom of the market, aka the start of the next bull run, it occurs several months after the start of Part 4. This bull run lasts until the next bear cycle, and in this case was the 2008 financial crisis. Same thing happens here, where the rates went up and started to decrease around July 2007. But again, the market keeps going down with the bottom occurring 18 months later. If you look closely, you can see something similar with the more recent area around the pandemic, but the whole money printing war, crazy inflation, and all that stuff made it hard to read, but the same thing was just there, but very briefly. This occurs consistently over history. Let's look at the other side of the chart into the 1960s. The bottom of the market does the same thing. It occurs months after the Fed begins to decrease rates, and this happens time and time again. We have an expectation of Part 4, yet we're still in Part 1. Now, let me explain a few things here. Why do the charts do this? Why do they move this way? Well, one of the reasons is because there is a lagging effect that interest rates have on the economy. Raising interest rates is like a blunt tool, and really the only tool that the Fed has at their disposal to fight inflation. Now, the economy, on the other side, is a finely tuned machine. So as they hammer away, most times it's impossible to project when and how much damage is done. They need to keep hammering away and create the demand destruction, which is required to reduce inflation. After smashing everything with their blunt tool, they reduced rates to resuscitate the economy. On top of all that, people are just reading the headlines. Yes, decreasing the increases of the rates is a sign we are close to getting to the next step of the eventual recovery. But as I showed, it doesn't happen right away. It takes months after we enter Part 4. Let's also take a moment to highlight Part 2. Now, this is where there is no increase or decrease. This is where the Fed funds rate remains constant. I see this as being another time when people get overly excited. But Jerome Powell has come out and said he plans on staying here for some time while they assess the situation. Yes, we are even closer to Part 4 here, but just understand that if we're here for a while, what does this mean for the economy? This point represents high interest rates, higher than they are today, and they're being held there. That's very bad for the economy. The obvious things that people will feel are your outstanding debts. If you have a variable mortgage or if you have credit card debts right now, you know what I'm talking about already. Now, they're going to be worse than they are today at that stage. High interest rates also affect small businesses. There is less funding from venture capital firms or big businesses to invest in or support them. So the so-called backbone of America, well, that's going to stagnate or even contract. Within bigger businesses, they'll report lower earnings, and these lead to more layoffs, which have been accelerating recently. That is the demand destruction cycle. People can afford less, businesses make less. They need to cut expenses, so people get laid off. They spend less because of that, and that spirals until it finds some sort of equilibrium. So even if you're just holding at that high interest rate as part of step 3, it is still very destructive. And speaking of that spiral, that's usually accompanied by a recession. And how likely is it that we have a recession?
According to Bloomberg, a probability of 100%.
What percentage of CEOs are expecting a recession in the next 12 to 18 months?
98%.
I think that the first half of the year is going to be the most challenging for the economy.
On top of all that, an inverted bond yield curve has probably been the single most accurate indicator of a looming recession. And guess what? It's the most inverted it's been in almost 40 years. And why is this important? Let's look how equities perform in a recession. They perform the worst prior to or during a recession. You can see that in this stock performance chart up here. But also, if we map out recessions over our history, there are steep declines in valuations during a recession. So again, many people much smarter than I am are certain a recession is coming. The most accurate indicator in our history says a recession is coming. Equities perform their worst prior to and during a recession. So imagine what an asset riskier than equities, like crypto and NFTs, will do. So combining everything I've said so far, that is the balance of information that is missing when people talk about the Fed pivot. There is a lack of understanding with the timing of everything. I want to touch on one last thing here, and it's not related to the Fed pivot, but is still related to this general topic, and that's with a particular black swan event. In crypto, we've pretty much baked in the whole FTX scandal and possible future contagion into the market prices. If another big player goes down, like crypto.com, that's probably not entirely baked in, but that's not the biggest issue. Let's talk about USDT, aka Tether. Now, there was a video by CoffeeZilla about a year ago highlighting how bad the reserves really are. I highly recommend it. I don't believe the risk in USDT is baked into the crypto markets. You see, if it's fine, the market just doesn't go up. It'll just do what it normally does. But if it's not fine, then we get absolutely destroyed. Since that CoffeeZilla video, the markets have tanked quite a bit, which puts at risk that 49% of its reserves, which is in basically unsecured debt that they can loan out to anybody, which is fine unless those people go bankrupt. It's not like we have a looming recession anyways, right? Let's also consider that Binance owns about 65 billion of USDT. Could they dump it like they dumped the FTT tokens to take out another rival that makes BUSD move up in rankings? Yes, this last point is a bit more tinfoil than you're probably expecting from me, but regardless, the reserves balance still remain an issue. A hard recession can still trigger something big, and that can absolutely kill the crypto markets. I do think we will get a run at the end of the year. We usually get a Christmas rally for various reasons. And this can happen especially if the CPI report on Tuesday comes in favorably and if the FOMC meeting the next day goes very well. Now, this can lead to a temporary rally to end the year. The key word is temporary because the main issues and fundamentals don't support a full comeback just yet. And I believe this will be another dead cat bounce. In any case, after watching this video and getting that missing information, whether you decide that the bottom is behind us or ahead of us, whether it's a soft landing or a crash landing, I'm fine with either. I just want to make sure that your decision, whatever that is based on the full picture, as a lot of people are just giving you the headlines, but not the knowledge. Thanks for watching.